The Galactic Coalition war room had never been so full. Representatives from every major species crowded around holographic displays, showing fleet positions, supply lines, and training schedules. At the center stood Admiral Kyung-suk, pointing to sections of the map with calm authority. Beside her, Hyunwoo translated strategic concepts into terms the Coalition could understand. 2 months had passed since the Battle of Krestos Belt. 2 months of desperate preparation. 2 months of teaching the galaxy how to fight. Your defensive doctrine is outdated, Kyung-suk said bluntly to a gathering of Coalition admirals. You focus on holding positions. The Devourers don't care about positions. They care about consumption. If you stand still, you die. We need mobile warfare. Hit and fade, strike and retreat. Make them chase you into kill zones. An older crystalline admiral bristled. I have commanded fleets for 300 years. I know how to fight. Then why did you lose every engagement before we arrived? The words were harsh, but Kyung-suk's tone was patient. I'm not questioning your courage or your experience. I'm telling you that everything you know is designed to fight other Coalition species. The Devourers don't follow those rules. We need to adapt or we die. The Admiral looked like he wanted to argue. Then he looked at the casualty reports from Coalition-only engagements with the Devourers. 78% losses. He nodded slowly. What do you need us to do? Learn, Kyung-suk said. Relearn everything. Captain Tae-yang was assigned to train Coalition officers in human naval tactics. He stood before a class of 50 captains, each one older and more experienced than him. They looked at him with barely concealed resentment. A human, young enough to be their child, presuming to teach them warfare. Let's run a simulation, Tae-yang said. Standard scenario. You have 20 ships. The enemy has 100. Defend the station. He gestured to the holographic display. A Valkyrian captain named Drenko volunteered. He was famous throughout the fleet, a veteran of dozens of campaigns. He set up his ships in a defensive sphere around the station, overlapping fields of fire, textbook perfect. Tae-yang played the enemy. His simulated fleet approached in waves, testing the defenses. Drenko's forces fired steadily, destroying enemies as they came. But slowly, inevitably, the weight of numbers overwhelmed him. His ships ran out of ammunition, their shields failed, and the station fell. The simulation ended with total defeat. Adequate, Drenko said, slightly defensive, but impossible to win. 5-to-1 odds are insurmountable. Watch, Tae-yang said. He reset the simulation and took control of the defending fleet. Instead of forming a defensive sphere, he spread his ships out. When the enemy approached, he didn't engage, he ran. His ships scattered in different directions and the enemy fleet broke formation to pursue. Then when the enemy was divided and confused, Tae-yang struck. His ships used the station's gravity well to slingshot around, hitting enemy groups from unexpected angles. He didn't fight fair. He ambushed, used asteroids for cover, and employed weapons in ways the simulation hadn't anticipated. When the simulation ended, Tae-yang had destroyed 70 enemy ships and saved the station. His losses, 3 vessels. The room was silent. How? Drenko asked. What did you do differently? I stopped trying to win the fight they wanted and started fighting the battle I could win. The enemy was stronger, but I was smarter. I used terrain, surprise, and their own aggression against them. These principles work at any scale against any enemy. Drenko studied the replay, watching each move carefully. This is not how we were taught. I know, Tae-yang said. That's why you need to learn. Over the following weeks, Drenko became Tae-yang's most dedicated student. The proud Valkyrian captain set aside his ego and absorbed everything the young human could teach. Others followed his example. The resistance faded as results spoke louder than pride. Meanwhile, Ji-won led a multinational science team studying captured Devourer bioships. Her team included scientists from 17 species, all working together in ways they never had before. The war was forcing cooperation that centuries of peace never achieved. I've found something, she announced during a meeting with Admiral Kyung-suk and Hyunwoo. The Devourers aren't a true hive mind. They're individuals, enslaved by a quantum signal from another dimension. If we could disrupt that signal at its source, we might free them. Free them? Hyunwoo asked. They've killed billions. They had no choice, Ji-won said, her eyes sad. I've been analyzing their neural patterns. There's evidence of consciousness underneath the control signal. They're prisoners in their own bodies, forced to watch themselves commit atrocities. If we could break the signal, they might become allies instead of enemies. That's a big if, Kyung-suk said. What would it take? Technology that doesn't exist. We'd need to create a stable dimensional rift, find the source of the control signal and shut it down, all while the largest invasion fleet in history is trying to kill us. Start working on it, Kyung-suk said. If there's even a chance, we take it. But we prepare for the worst. 6 weeks before the main Devourer fleet was set to arrive, Admiral Kyung-suk made a controversial decision. Instead of waiting for the enemy to come to them, she would strike first. Operation Prometheus, she announced to the assembled fleet commanders. We hit 3 Devourer staging areas simultaneously. We destroy their forward supplies and buy more time to prepare. That's suicide, a coalition admiral protested. Those staging areas are heavily defended. Yes, Kyung-suk agreed. That's why I'm leading one strike group personally. Captain Taeyang will lead the second. Admiral Renva of the Crystalline Fleet will lead the third. We go in fast, hit hard, and get out. Volunteers only. Every human crew volunteered immediately. Slowly, coalition forces began raising their hands too. They had learned to trust Earth's leadership. If the humans thought it could be done, maybe it could. Taeyang's strike group consisted of 150 human ships and 400 coalition vessels. His target was the Vorton Nebula, where Devourer forces had established a massive bio-shipyard. Intelligence suggested 50,000 enemy ships were there, under construction or in reserve. The battle was brutal. Taeyang's forces used the nebula's dense gas clouds for cover, striking and vanishing before the Devourers could respond effectively. They destroyed the shipyard and thousands of bioships. But the cost was terrible. 40% casualties. Ships that had survived 1,000 years of peace now drifted as burning wreckage. Taeyang's own flagship took critical damage. The bridge was breached, emergency force fields failing. All hands abandon ship, he ordered. His crew evacuated in escape pods, but systems were failing too fast. His second-in-command, Seok-jin, stayed behind. Sir, someone needs to pilot her into the enemy command ship. Make this count. Seok-jin, that's an order. Get to the pods. With respect, sir, I'm refusing that order. You're needed for what comes next. I'm not. Seok-jin sealed the bridge door, locking Taeyang out. Tell my family I'm proud. Tell Earth we remembered what we are. Taeyang pounded on the door, but it was too late. Through the viewport, he watched as Seok-jin piloted the crippled ship directly into the Devourer command vessel. The explosion destroyed both ships and triggered a chain reaction that took out another dozen enemy vessels. The evacuation pod carried Taeyang away from the blast, away from the death of a hero, away from yet another friend who had given everything for a galaxy that had hated them just months ago. Later, back at base, Taeyang stood in the memorial hall where the names of the fallen were inscribed in light. Seok-jin's name joined thousands of others. Human names, Valkyrian names, crystalline names, all together now. United in death as they were learning to be united in life. Dranko found him there. The Valkyrian captain stood beside him in silence for a long moment. Then he spoke. On my world, we have a saying. The blade remembers the forge. We're being forged in this fire, all of us. Your friend Seok-jin helped forge something new. A galaxy that stands together. I hope it's enough, Taeyang said quietly. It will be. Because you taught us how. The 3 strike groups of Operation Prometheus all succeeded, but the cost was staggering. 20,000 personnel dead. Hundreds of ships destroyed. But they had bought time and destroyed resources the Devourers would not have for the final battle. In the aftermath, something unexpected happened. The coalition began awarding honors to the fallen. Seok-jin became the first human to receive the Star of Valor, the coalition's highest military decoration. The ceremony was broadcast across the galaxy. Billions watched as Vexitorin himself pinned the medal to Seok-jin's portrait, tears streaming down his face. We were wrong about humanity, he said to the assembled representatives. We thought they were weak because they seemed gentle. We mistook patience for cowardice. We mistook wisdom for fear. But now we understand. Humanity is strong precisely because they choose when to use that strength. They fight not for glory but for necessity, not for conquest but for survival. And they will die willingly to protect people who once mocked them. That is a strength we should have honored from the beginning. Hyunwoo watched the ceremony from Earth. The planet was transformed now. Every city contributed to the war effort. Factories ran. The journey to Earth took 12 days. Hyunwoo spent most of it alone in his cabin, watching the stars slide past the viewport. The transport ship was Valkyrian, filled with merchants and travelers. None of them spoke to him. That was normal. Humans traveling alone were usually ignored unless someone needed cheap labor or wanted to make a joke. He thought about Ji-won often. Before he left the station, he had tried to find her, to say something encouraging. But she had already gone. Disappeared without filing the proper departure forms, which would probably get her in trouble. He hoped she was safe. He hoped she had somewhere to go where people wouldn't steal her dreams. As the ship approached Sol System, Hyunwoo noticed something strange. There was a checkpoint at the border, something that had never been there before. 2 ships flanked the transport, sleek vessels he didn't recognize. They were dark gray, almost black, with lines that looked more like weapons than any human ship he had ever seen. The transport captain received a message and announced that all passengers needed to provide identification for Sol System entry. This was new. Earth had never enforced its borders before. There was never any point. When it was Hyunwoo's turn, a voice came over his personal comm. Ambassador Hyunwoo, welcome home. Please proceed directly to Earth upon arrival. A shuttle is waiting for you. The voice was human, professional, and carried an authority he wasn't used to hearing from his own people. The transport dropped him at the Sol station, a small orbital platform that usually handled minor trade, but the station looked different. New modules had been attached, and there were ships docked there, dozens of them. Ships that looked like the ones at the checkpoint. Military ships, though Earth wasn't supposed to have a real military. A shuttle brought him down to Earth, landing in Geneva at the old diplomatic complex. The city looked the same as he remembered, but something in the air felt different. People walked with their heads higher. There was energy in their movements, purpose in their steps. A car waited for him, driven by a young woman in a uniform he didn't recognize. She didn't speak during the drive, but she smiled at him in the mirror. It was a knowing smile, like she had a secret she was dying to share. They drove out of the city into the mountains. The road wound higher and higher until they reached a facility built into the rock itself, heavily guarded, sealed behind doors that looked thick enough to survive a nuclear blast. This was not on any map Hyunwoo had ever seen. Inside, the facility opened into a massive command center. Screens covered the walls, displaying data streams and star maps. Hundreds of people worked at stations, their fingers flying across holographic displays. And in the center of it all stood a woman Hyunwoo recognized from history files, Admiral Kyung-suk. She was supposed to be retired, a ceremonial position with no real authority. She looked anything but ceremonial now. Her uniform was sharp, her posture military perfect, and her eyes held the weight of command. When she saw Hyunwoo, she smiled. Ambassador, thank you for coming. I know you have questions. Let me show you something first. She gestured for him to follow. They walked through corridors carved from stone, passing rooms full of equipment and personnel. Finally, they reached an observation deck. Kyung-suk pressed her hand to a panel, and the wall in front of them became transparent. Hyunwoo's breath caught in his throat. Below them, deep beneath the mountain, was a shipyard. But not just any shipyard. It was enormous, stretching for kilometers in every direction. And it was full of ships, hundreds of warships, each one sleek and deadly, lined up in perfect rows. Construction drones moved between them, making final adjustments. These ships made the ones at the checkpoint look small. How? Hyunwoo whispered. The treaty. The inspections. The coalition monitors everything we build. They monitor what we show them, Kyung-suk said. For 1,000 years, Ambassador, Earth has been building, not above where satellites can see. Below, in the oceans under the mountains, on the dark side of the moon, in hollowed-out asteroids. We've been very patient, very careful. But why? Why hide this? Because we were waiting. A new voice spoke from behind them. An old woman approached, moving slowly but steadily. Her face was deeply lined, but her eyes were sharp and clear. Hyunwoo, it's good to see you again. He recognized her from old photographs. Elder Sora, I thought you were dead? Nearly, but I've been kept alive for this. Someone needed to remember the truth. She moved to stand beside them, looking down at the ships. Do you know what really happened 1,000 years ago? First contact. The coalition came to Earth. We joined the Galactic Alliance. We signed the treaty. Sora laughed, a dry sound. That's what they teach now. Let me tell you what actually happened. She turned to face him fully. When the coalition first found Earth, they didn't come in peace. They came with demands. Join them, follow their rules, accept their authority. We refused. We said Earth would join as equals or not at all. So they sent an armada, 5,000 ships. The Grand Armada, they called it. It was supposed to be a demonstration. Show the primitive humans what real power looked like. Force us to submit. Sora's eyes grew distant, remembering. I was young then, working in Earth's defense network. I watched what happened. The Armada arrived at the edge of our solar system. They broadcast their demands. We had 72 hours to surrender completely. Our leaders refused. So the Armada advanced. She paused. They never made it past Mars. Hyunwoo stared at her. What do you mean? In 72 hours, we destroyed them. All 5,000 ships. We used weapons the galaxy had never seen. Tactics they couldn't counter. We didn't just defeat them, Ambassador. We annihilated them so completely that the Coalition begged for mercy. That's impossible, Hyunwoo said, but his voice was weak. If we were that powerful, why did we surrender? Why sign the treaty? Because our leaders understood something the Coalition didn't. The galaxy was old, tired, set in its ways. If we forced them to accept us through military victory alone, they would hate us forever. There would be endless war, endless resistance. So we made a different choice. Admiral Kyung-suk took over the story. We proposed the treaty ourselves. We said we would limit our military, restrict our expansion, share our technology, for 1,000 years. In that time, the galaxy would grow comfortable with us. They would see us as harmless, even weak. They would forget what we were capable of. And when the time was right, when they needed us, we would reveal the truth. But why would we need to reveal it at all? Hyunwoo asked. Come with me, Kyung-suk said. She led him to a different room, one filled with scientists working frantically at computers. In the center of the room stood Ji-won. She looked up when they entered, and her face broke into a surprised smile. Ambassador, I didn't know you were coming. Ji-won, what are you doing here? Working. Finally working on what matters. She brought up a display that showed the galaxy, but with additions he didn't recognize. Strange readings, anomalies at the edge of known space. 3 months ago I detected something. Quantum distortions on a massive scale. I tried to tell the Coalition Science Board, but they ignored it. Said my calculations were wrong. So I sent the data to Earth instead. We listened, Kyung-suk said. We confirmed her findings. Something is coming, Ambassador. Something from beyond our galaxy. We call them the Devourers. A hive mind species that has consumed 3 entire galaxies. They're entering our space now. G1 pulled up more data. Images of devastated star systems, planets stripped of all life. Space stations torn apart. The Coalition doesn't know yet. Their sensor technology isn't advanced enough to detect the threat until it's almost on top of them. They have maybe 6 months before the first wave arrives. How many? Hyunwoo asked, dreading the answer. Based on the quantum signatures, we estimate between 10 and 15 million bioships in the main fleet. Smaller scouting groups are already here in our galaxy, destroying outer colonies. The Coalition thinks they're dealing with local pirates or raiders. They have no idea what's really coming. Hyunwoo felt the room spin. 15 million ships? The entire Coalition fleet is maybe 50,000 vessels. This is impossible. We can't fight that. The Coalition can't, Admiral Kyung-suk corrected. But we can. We've spent 1,000 years preparing for the day when the galaxy would need us. This is that day. How many ships do we have? Hyunwoo asked. 2,000 in the first fleet. Another 3,000 under construction. And we have weapons the Devourers have never encountered. Technology we've been developing in secret for centuries. She pulled up schematics that meant nothing to Hyunwoo, but looked devastating. We can fight them, but we can't do it alone. We need the Coalition to stand with us. They'll never believe it, Hyunwoo said. Earth, the species they've mocked for a millennium, suddenly claiming to be their saviors. They'll think it's a trick or a delusion. That's why we need you, Ambassador. You need to go back. You need to convince them. Tell them the truth. Tell them what's coming. Tell them that Earth is ready to help, but only if they're willing to accept us as equals. And if they refuse, Admiral Kyung-suk's face was grim. Then we save what we can and rebuild from the ashes. But I don't think they'll refuse. Not when they see proof. What proof? The Nexus array hung in space like a wound in reality. It was an ancient gravitational anomaly, surrounded by megastructures built by civilizations long dead. Now it would serve as humanity's chosen battleground, the gateway to the galactic core. If the Devourers broke through here, trillions would die. Admiral Kyung-suk stood on the bridge of the ESS Indomitable, watching as 50,000 ships took their positions. Human vessels formed the spearhead, sleek and deadly. Behind them, coalition forces spread out in formations they had practiced for weeks. Valkyrian shield ships, crystalline energy platforms, Hive Collective swarm fighters, species that had never fought together now moved as one. Fleet status? Kyung-suk asked. All battle groups report ready, the tactical officer replied. Coalition forces are holding formation. Morale is high but not certain. Everyone knew what was coming. Long-range sensors had detected the enemy fleet 3 days ago. 10 million bioships, a swarm so vast it created its own gravitational signature. They would arrive in less than an hour. The plan was desperate but simple. Hold the line for 12 hours. That's how long Ji-won needed to activate her dimensional rift device and send a strike team through to disrupt the Devourer control signal. If they succeeded, the enemy fleet might turn into allies. If they failed, well, at least they would die fighting. Taeyang commanded Battle Group South, reformed after Operation Prometheus. His ships held the right flank, the most vulnerable position. Drenko served as his second-in-command now, the Valkyrian captain having proven himself a master of human tactics. Ready? Taeyang asked him. To die beside humans? It's an honor I never expected to have. Drenko smiled. But I'd prefer to live if it's all the same. Agreed. Let's try for that. Hyunwoo watched from the command center on Vendros Prime. His job was coordination, keeping communication flowing between fleet groups and civilian evacuations. Behind the battle line, transport ships were moving non-combatants away from the core worlds. If the defense failed, at least some would survive. Vextorin stood beside him. The council chair had insisted on staying, despite the danger. If this is the end, he had said, I will witness it. I will not hide while braver beings fight. The enemy appeared on long-range sensors. First a few dozen ships, then hundreds, then thousands. The numbers kept climbing. 5,000, 10,000, 100,000. The swarm blotted out the stars. All ships, weapons ready. Kyung-suk's voice carried across every channel. Remember your training. Trust your wingmates. Fight for each other. Fight for tomorrow, for Earth, for the Coalition, for all of us. The Devourer fleet advanced like a living tide. Their bioships pulsed with organic light, connected by the quantum signal that enslaved them. At the front were the largest vessels, massive constructs designed to ram through defenses and break formations. Fire at will, Kyung-suk ordered. The battle began. Human ships unleashed quantum disruptors that erased matter from existence. Coalition energy weapons carved through bioships. Missiles, kinetic projectiles, and experimental weapons filled the space between the fleets with death and light. The Devourers came on without hesitation, without fear. They crashed into the Coalition lines like waves against rock. Ships exploded. Lives ended in flashes of light. But the defense held. For the first hour, casualties were manageable. The Coalition had learned human tactics well. They used the Nexus Array's gravitational effects to their advantage, pulling enemies into kill zones. They fought as a unified force, each species supporting the others. But the numbers were overwhelming. For every enemy destroyed, 10 more pushed forward. The Devourers adapted to every tactic, learned from every mistake. By the third hour, 1/4 of the Coalition fleet was gone. Taeyang's battle group took heavy fire. His ships fought desperately, holding the right flank against impossible odds. All wings execute pattern Delta, use their mass against them. His pilots responded with precision, drawing enemy ships into the gravity well of a nearby dead star. Hundreds of Devourer vessels were pulled in and crushed, but hundreds more took their place. Sir, we're taking casualties faster than we can replace positions, Drenko reported. Recommend pulling back to secondary defensive line. Negative. If we pull back, they'll break through to the core worlds. We hold here. Yes, sir. Drenko paused. It's been an honor. Save that for after we win. By the 6th hour, half the Coalition fleet was destroyed. Kyung-suk made impossible decisions, sacrificing entire battle groups to maintain the line. Each time she gave the order, she watched good people die. Each time she pushed aside the grief and focused on the next move. How much longer does Ji-won need? She asked. 6 more hours, the response came. The rift device is charging, but it can't be rushed. 6 hours. They had to hold for 6 more hours. Kyung-suk looked at the tactical display and ran the numbers in her head. At current casualty rates, they would have maybe 5,000 ships left by then. Against 8 million enemies, she opened a channel to the entire fleet. All ships, all crews, I won't lie to you. The math isn't good, but math doesn't account for courage. It doesn't account for determination. It doesn't account for the fact that every single one of you, human and alien alike, chose to stand here today, knowing the cost, knowing the odds. You chose to fight, so we fight 6 more hours. Hold the line. In her laboratory deep below Vendro's prime surface, G1 worked frantically on the dimensional rift device. Her team, exhausted beyond measure, made final adjustments to equipment that had never been tested at full power. Power levels at 60%. Someone called out, "Dimensional harmonic stabilizing." Another added. G1 studied the readouts, making minute adjustments. The theory was sound. The calculations were perfect. But theory and reality didn't always agree, especially when dealing with dimensional rifts. 8 hours ago, you said 6 hours. A Valkyrian scientist named Ilhan said quietly. How much longer, really? I don't know, G1 admitted. Every time we increase power, new instabilities emerge. If we rush it, the rift could collapse and kill the strike team. Or worse, tear a hole in reality that swallows this entire system. And if we're too slow, the defense fails and billions die. I know. G1's hands shook as she made another adjustment. I know. By the 9th hour, only 15,000 coalition ships remained. They fought with the desperation of beings who knew they were dying but refused to go quietly. Every species showed courage. Crystallines used their bodies to shield damaged vessels. Hive collective fighters swarmed enemy ships in suicide runs. Valkyrians rammed their ships into enemy formations when weapons failed. And humans fought like the galaxy had always feared they could, relentless, creative, unwilling to accept defeat. Tai Yang's flagship took critical damage. The bridge was on fire, systems failing. All hands abandon ship, he ordered for the 2nd time in his military career. Sir, we can still fight, his weapons officer protested. Not for long. Get to the pods. That's an order. His crew evacuated. Tai Yang waited until the last escape pod launched, then prepared to leave himself. But the pod system had failed. He was trapped. Tai Yang, what's your status? Drenko's voice came through the damaged communication system. Pod system's down. It's all right. I'll pilot her manually, cause some damage before she goes. Negative. I'm coming to get you. Don't be stupid. You're needed out there. Then live so you can need me later. Drenko's ship broke formation, racing toward Tai Yang's crippled vessel under heavy fire. He pulled alongside, extending a docking tube. Move, Captain. That's an order from your subordinate. Tai Yang couldn't help but laugh even as the ship shook around him. He made his way to the airlock and crossed into Drenko's ship. Behind them, his flagship exploded, taking 3 enemy vessels with it. Thank you, Tai Yang said. We stand together, Drenko replied. Human and Valkyrian, that's what you taught us. By the 11th hour, 8,000 ships remained. The defense was collapsing. Enemy forces were breaking through in multiple sectors. Hyunwoo watched the tactical displays and felt despair creeping in. They had fought so hard, sacrificed so much, and it still wasn't enough. Then G1's voice came through the communications. Rift device ready. We need a strike team. Volunteers only. This is one way. Whoever goes through won't be coming back. Silence fell across the command center. A one-way mission. To die in another dimension, far from home with no hope of rescue or recognition. I'll go, a voice said. Then another. And another. Within minutes, dozens had volunteered. Humans, Valkyrians, crystallines, every species represented. They all understood what it meant. They volunteered anyway. G1 selected the team personally, 8 beings including herself and Ilhan. They assembled in the rift chamber, a massive room filled with equipment that hummed with barely contained power. Once we're through, G1 explained, we'll have maybe 30 minutes before the environment breaks down our physical forms. We need to find the control nexus and shut it down. The good news is, if we succeed, every devourer in this galaxy will be freed from their enslavement. The bad news is we won't survive to see it. Seems fair, Ilhan said. We save trillions, they remember us. Better than most get. Taeyang's sister Hei-Wan was part of the team. She was a special R. Hyunwoo stood before the monument of first contact and felt nothing but shame. The massive crystal structure rose above him, reaching toward the artificial sky of the station. Every species in the galaxy had their section here. their moment of glory carved in light and stone. The Valkyrians had a towering pillar showing their first leap into the stars. The crystallines had a beautiful wall of living light. Even the insect-like hive collective had a proud display of their colony ships. Earth's section was different. It sat in a dark corner, barely visible. Someone had sprayed words across it in 3 different languages. The translation made Hyunwoo's jaw tight. The sleeping giant that never woke. Another said, humanity's joke. He had stopped reporting these incidents years ago. Nobody cared. Nobody ever cleaned it. He wore his ambassador uniform, the blue and white of Earth's diplomatic corps. Once it had made him proud. Now it felt like a costume. Other diplomats walked past him without a glance. Some pointed and whispered. A group of young Valkyrian students laughed as they took pictures in front of the monument. One of them pretended to sleep, lying on the ground while his friends recorded it. They were making fun of Earth, making fun of him, making fun of all humans. Hyunwoo wanted to say something. He wanted to scream at them that they didn't know the truth. But he stayed quiet. He always stayed quiet. That was his job. Smile, bow, accept the insults, and represent a species that the galaxy saw as nothing more than a cosmic accident. His communicator buzzed. A message from Earth marked urgent and encrypted. That was unusual. Earth rarely sent him anything important. Most days, his job involved attending ceremonies where humans were ignored, or meetings where Earth's requests were denied with barely concealed amusement. He found a private alcove and opened the message. The words were simple, but they made his heart race. The treaty expires in 30 days. Come home. It's time. Hyunwoo read it 3 times. The treaty. Everyone knew about the Treaty of Submission. 1,000 years ago, Earth had signed away its freedom. Population limits, military restrictions, technology sharing requirements, and borders that kept humanity trapped in a tiny corner of the galaxy. The treaty that made Earth a joke. But why would its expiration matter? Earth was weak. That was just reality, wasn't it? His communicator buzzed again. This time it was a reminder about the Galactic Science Summit happening in the main hall. He was supposed to attend, to show Earth's commitment to knowledge, as his superiors phrased it. He closed the message from home and headed toward the summit, his mind spinning with questions. The summit hall was enormous, designed to hold thousands. Beings of every shape and size filled the seats. Hyunwoo found his spot in the back where Earth's delegation always sat. There was only one other human there, a young woman he recognized. Ji-won. She was a physicist, one of the few humans allowed to work on coalition projects. She looked nervous, clutching a data tablet against her chest. Her presentation was scheduled for today. Hyunwoo had read her research proposal once. Something about quantum tunneling and faster-than-light travel. It was brilliant, even he could tell that, and he barely understood the science. The summit began. Speaker after speaker presented their research. Each one received polite applause. Then Ji-won's name was called. She walked to the stage, her steps small and uncertain. The crowd's murmur had a particular tone. Amusement. Curiosity about what the human would try to say. Ji-won's presentation was clear and well-prepared. She explained her discovery, how she had found a new approach to quantum tunneling that could revolutionize space travel. The math was displayed on massive screens. The implications were staggering. When she finished, there was silence. Then a Valkyrian professor stood up. His name was Vextorin, and he was famous across the galaxy. He smiled, but it wasn't kind. Fascinating, he said, his voice amplified across the hall. Though I must point out that this research is remarkably similar to work my team published 6 months ago. In fact, several of these equations are identical. He displayed his own data on the screens. It was Ji-won's work. Her exact work. I am disappointed that the human delegation would attempt such blatant plagiarism. Ji-won's face went pale. That's not true. I submitted my preliminary findings 8 months ago to the review board. Your publication came after... Are you calling me a liar? Vextorin's voice turned cold. The review board has no record of your submission. I've checked. Of course he checked. Of course the records were missing. Hyunwoo had seen this pattern before. Human innovations quietly disappeared, reappearing later under alien names. Perhaps, Vextorin continued, addressing the crowd now, this is simply a case of humans not understanding the proper protocols. We all know they lack the capacity for truly original thought. They're good at following instructions, at least. This is probably just a misunderstanding." The crowd laughed, that casual, comfortable laughter of people who all agreed on an obvious truth. Ji-won stood frozen on the stage, her life's work stolen in front of thousands, with no way to prove the truth. Hyunwoo felt something crack inside his chest. Rage, hot and familiar, rose in his throat. But what could he do? If he made a scene, it would only prove what they all believed, that humans were emotional, primitive, unable to handle civilized discourse. He caught Ji-won's eye as she left the stage. He tried to put everything he felt into that one look. "I'm sorry. I see you. This isn't right." She nodded slightly, then disappeared into the crowd. The summit continued as if nothing had happened. More presentations, more polite applause. Hyunwoo sat in his chair and stared at nothing. His communicator held that message from Earth. 30 days. Come home, it's time. What did it mean? What could possibly change? Earth had been broken for a millennium. He had seen the reports, the statistics. Earth's military was a joke, a few dozen outdated ships that other species called ceremonial. Earth's technology was centuries behind the coalition standard. Earth's colonies were small and struggling. Earth's people were scattered and divided, billions living under the weight of knowing they were the galaxy's failure. He remembered his grandmother's stories. She used to tell him about the old days before the treaty. She said Earth had been different then, strong, dangerous. She said the galaxy had feared humanity once, truly feared them, but she was old and her stories sounded like fairy tales, comforting lies to help a species cope with its own inadequacy. That night, Hyunwoo couldn't sleep. He lay in his small quarters aboard the station and stared at the ceiling. Through his window, he could see the stars. Somewhere out there, past the Coalition's vast territories, past the hundreds of alien worlds, was Earth. Home. A planet he hadn't visited in 5 years because there was never any reason to go back. His communicator buzzed a third time. Another message from Earth, just 2 words, "Trust us." Something was happening. Something big enough to send encrypted messages across the galaxy. Something that required him to come home. He made his decision. In the morning, he would request a leave of absence and book passage to Earth. If they denied his request, he would go anyway. He was tired of being the ambassador of shame. As he finally drifted toward sleep, Hyunwoo thought about Ji-won's face on that stage. He thought about the monument covered in insults. He thought about 1,000 years of ridicule, of being treated like children, like pets, like a species that didn't matter. And he thought about his grandmother's last words before she died. She had gripped his hand with surprising strength and whispered, "They forgot, Hyunwoo. We let them forget. But one day they'll remember. And on that day, the galaxy will understand what it means to wake a sleeping giant." At the time, he thought it was just the rambling of a dying woman. Now, with those messages burning in his mind, he wondered, 30 days. Come home, trust us, it's time. Maybe, just maybe, his grandmother had been telling the truth all along. The Galactic Council chamber was designed to impress. It sat at the heart of Vendros Prime, a massive sphere where representatives from hundreds of species gathered. Hyunwoo had been here many times before, always sitting in the back rows, always ignored. Today was different. Today, he stood at the center podium, and every eye in the chamber was on him. "You claim to have information about a galactic threat," Council Chair Vextorin said from his elevated seat, the same Valkyrian who had humiliated Ji-won. His voice dripped with skepticism. "The Council is listening, Ambassador. Though I remind you that false alarms carry severe penalties." Hyunwoo activated his display. Images filled the air around him. Dead star systems. Destroyed colonies. Ships torn apart. 3 weeks ago, 7 colonies on the outer rim went silent. 2 weeks ago, Coalition patrol vessels were destroyed by an unknown enemy. 1 week ago, the Krestos outpost, home to 27 billion souls, was completely obliterated. No survivors, no trace of what happened except these quantum signatures. The chamber erupted in noise. Representatives shouted questions, demanded explanations. Hyunwoo waited for silence, then continued. The Coalition's sensors couldn't identify the threat until it was too late. But Earth's sensors could. We've been tracking this enemy for months. They're called the Devourers, a hive mind species from beyond our galaxy. They've consumed 3 entire galaxies before ours, and they're here now. Preposterous, Vextorin said. Earth doesn't have sensor technology more advanced than the Coalition. You've been bound by the treaty for a millennium. You have nothing we don't. That's what you believed, Hyunwoo said calmly. It was easier than the truth. Let me show you what we actually have. He transmitted new data directly to the Council's systems. Schematics, energy readings, fleet compositions, evidence of Earth's hidden military, of technology decades beyond Coalition standard. The chamber fell silent as representatives absorbed what they were seeing. This is impossible, someone whispered. How long? Vextorin demanded, his voice shaking. How long have you been building this in secret? 1,000 years, Hyunwoo said. The treaty expires in 2 days. We've counted every single one of them. Before Vextorin could respond, alarms rang throughout the station. A Coalition admiral burst into the chamber, his face pale. Council Chair, we've just received reports. A massive enemy fleet has engaged our forces at the Krestos Belt. 15 defensive stations home to billions across multiple worlds. They're asking for immediate reinforcement. Vextorin stood, his usual confidence cracking. How many enemy ships? 10,000, sir. Our forces are outnumbered 5 to 1. They're requesting any available vessels to assist in the defense. Send everything within range, Vextorin ordered. Then he turned to Hyunwoo, and for the first time there was fear in his eyes. Ambassador, if Earth truly has this fleet you claim, now would be the time to prove it. Hyunwoo allowed himself a small smile. Admiral Kyung-suk anticipated you might ask. Our fleet is already en route. They should arrive within the hour. The council chamber transformed into a command center. Screens showed the battle at Krestos Belt in real time. Coalition ships fought desperately against the Devourer bioships. Massive organic vessels that moved like living things and hit like kinetic weapons. The Coalition was losing badly. Ships exploded in brilliant flashes. Defensive stations crumbled under the assault. Hyunwoo watched and felt sick. Those were people dying out there. Billions of lives depending on ships that were outmatched and overwhelmed. He checked his communicator. 1 minute until Earth's fleet arrived. Sir, we're detecting new quantum signatures, the Admiral reported. Multiple ships entering the system. By the stars, how many are there? On the screen, space itself seemed to tear open. Quantum tunnels, a technology the Coalition considered theoretical, bloomed like flowers. And through them came Earth's fleet. 2,000 warships emerged in perfect formation. They were beautiful and terrifying, sleek vessels that looked more like predators than machines. Dark hulls that absorbed light, weapons arrays that glowed with barely contained energy. At their head was the flagship, ESS Indomitable, with Admiral Kyung-suk in command. The council chamber was silent. Every being there stared at the screens in disbelief. This is Admiral Kyung-suk of the Earth Defense Fleet, a voice came through the communication system. Coalition forces pull back to defensive positions. We'll take it from here. The Coalition ships retreated and Earth's fleet advanced. What happened next would be studied for generations. The human ships moved unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. They didn't fly in straight lines or predictable patterns. They danced through space, each vessel responding to the others in perfect coordination. When they engaged the Devourers, it was with overwhelming precision. Weapons fire lit up the darkness. But these weren't the standard energy weapons the Coalition used. These were quantum disruptors that didn't just destroy matter. They erased it from existence. Where a Coalition beam might damage a Devourer ship, a human weapon deleted entire sections of it from reality. And the tactics. Human pilots flew maneuvers that would kill any other species from the gravitational forces alone. They used the Devourer's own mass against them, drawing enemies into kill zones and traps. They targeted weak points the Coalition had never identified. In the council chamber, Hyunwoo watched a young captain named Tae Yang lead a squadron through the heart of the Devourer formation. His voice came across the command channel, calm and professional. Dragon Squadron, execute kinetic rain on my mark. 3, 2, 1, mark. The squadron released thousands of small projectiles accelerated to relativistic speeds. When they hit the Devourer ships, the kinetic energy turned organic matter into expanding clouds of atoms. 12 enemy vessels simply ceased to exist. Impossible, someone breathed in the council chamber. How can they fly like that? The G-forces alone. Humans evolved in a heavier gravity than most species, Hyunwoo explained quietly. Our bodies can handle stresses that would kill you. We turned that into a tactical advantage. The battle raged for hours. G1's research became critical when human technicians used it to create a jamming field that disrupted the Devourer's hive mind coordination. Without their mental link, The bioships became confused, easier targets. Slowly, impossibly, Earth's fleet was winning. Admiral Kyung-suk's voice remained calm throughout. Target the command nodes. Cut off their coordination completely. All wings focus fire on designated targets. The Devourer fleet began to collapse. Their formations broke apart. Their ships tried to retreat, but found themselves surrounded. Human vessels pressed the advantage, methodical and merciless. When the last Devourer ship was destroyed, a cheer went up from the coalition ships. They had witnessed something impossible. Earth, the species they had mocked and dismissed, had just saved them all. The battle statistics appeared on the council chamber screens. 10,000 Devourer ships destroyed. Coalition casualties if Earth hadn't intervened. Estimated 15 billion dead across multiple worlds. Actual casualties. Minimal, mostly damage to stations and infrastructure. Human losses. 47 ships. 12,000 personnel. The silence in the chamber was heavy with shame and awe. Admiral Kyung-suk's face appeared on the main screen. She looked tired but satisfied. Council Chair Vextorin, the Krestos belt is secure. Our fleet will remain on station to assist with recovery efforts. I believe we need to have a conversation about the immediate future. Vextorin stood slowly. For a moment Hyunwoo thought he might refuse, might cling to his pride. But then the chair did something unexpected. He bowed deeply, a gesture of profound respect in Velkarian culture. On behalf of the Galactic Coalition, I apologize to Earth and to all humanity. We were blind. We were arrogant. We were wrong. His voice cracked. You saved billions of lives today. Lives that would have been lost because of our ignorance. Hyunwoo felt a weight lift from his shoulders. 1,000 years of insults, 1,000 years of ridicule, all dissolving in this single moment of acknowledgement. The treaty expires tomorrow, Hyunwoo said. When it does, Earth will be free of all restrictions. We propose new terms. Earth joins the coalition as an equal member with full sovereignty. All previous limitations are removed, and in exchange we will help you fight this threat. What do you want in return? Vextorin asked. Nothing but respect, Hyunwoo said. And the promise that you'll never forget this lesson. Never forget what happened when you underestimated us. Never forget that strength isn't just about weapons and ships. It's about the will to use them for something greater than yourself. Representatives were nodding now, from species across the chamber. They had seen the proof with their own eyes. Earth wasn't weak. Earth had never been weak. They had simply been patient. But then Admiral Kyung-suk's face grew grim. Council, there's something you need to know. The fleet you just saw destroyed was a scouting force. We've been analyzing the Devourer quantum signatures. The main armada is still coming. We estimate 10 million bioships, possibly more. They'll be here in 3 months. The chamber erupted in panic. 10 million ships. It was unthinkable. The largest fleet the coalition had ever assembled was 50,000 vessels. They would be outnumbered 200 to 1.